Very good evening to everybody watching. Thank you for joining us tonight on the evening review. My name is Duminga Ndala. Tonight on the platform, we welcome back a regular visitor to the platform. That is Duminga Ndala, who is, of course, tonight appearing in her capacity as Chairperson of Young Women of Africa, the Namibian chapter of that organization that she'll explain briefly about. They are busy organizing a very important festival, which she'll get into in a moment. Thank you very much, Duminga, for making time. It's always a pleasure talking to you. Tell us first about Young Women of Africa.
Good evening to your viewers, and thank you. It's always a pleasure being here. So the Young Women of Africa is a continental movement that was established by former leaders and current youth leaders on the African continent. We are there to empower the girl child and, of course, to advance policies that speaks to the aspiration and the lived realities of African women on the continent. You would know that we have an issue of period poverty on the African continent, and this is really why we are here to advance such a policy and to ensure that period poverty ends in our lifetime. We are currently represented within around about 32 African countries, and of course every year we have a continental convention where we just exchange views on what should we do and what policies we should come about to support women, especially in rural areas, those ones that are always excluded from policy and decision making, to of course exchange ideas, and of course to come up with progressive programs that speaks to the empowerment of women and especially the girl child. So that's basically what the Young Women of Africa is. And of course this year I was officially appointed as the chairperson of the Young Women of Africa. We have a Namibian structure where my vice chairperson is Christine Haindaka from the SWAPO party, and of course she was just recently sworn in as a member of parliament, and we have other members that are occupying such spaces. So it's an apolitical movement that speaks to the empowerment of women on the African continent.
Okay. So when you say chairperson, are you now, is that for the Namibian chapter or?
For the Namibian chapter.
Okay, wonderful.
Yes.
Yeah. So 24 to 25 April at Hilton Hotel, there will be that African Young Women Festival. Is that just for, again, the Namibian side of things, or do you expect others to come also from elsewhere?
Yes. So first, the African Knowledge Women Festival, it's basically will be a continental event. We are expecting to have 200 delegates and of course 150 local from Namibia and then 50 international guests. So basically we decided to come up with this knowledge in order for us to exchange knowledge on African practices, policies, and of course just to celebrate the lives of women that have been that have been really thriving, whether it's in the political spectrum, whether it's in the social spectrum or the economic spectrum. You would know, if we have to go historically, that women were very instrumental within our liberation movement. They just did not act as support system, but they were also at the battalion, they're at the forefront. So we would like to celebrate such women, and would also like to tap from their knowledge as to how did they do it, what can we learn from them, and how do we sort of continue with the journey of women empowerment and so forth. So we are very excited because it's first of its kind on the African continent, and we have various exciting speakers, such as the Speaker of the National Assembly, who will be the keynote speaker at the closing ceremony. The Minister of Gender, Women and Gender Equality, Honorable Dr. Emma Kantema, will also be one of the speakers. So basically we are trying to bring women from different sectors, firstly, and also women from different sectors of society, which is whether it's urban women, rural urban and peri-urban women, so that they really have this platform and network, platform to network and to share ideas on how they can help each other going forth.
Yeah. What do you think is the status of, because you spoke about the lived realities of women. What are those?
Number one, of course, high rate of unemployment. If you have to check countrywide on the African continent, a lot of women are confronted by the issue of unemployment. And this has to do with access, firstly, to employment, access to information, especially women in the rural areas. They do not have access to adequate information, and this is why. And of course, lastly, access to financial institutions. Even if they want to be self-employed and they want to come up with their own businesses, they are subjected to collateral. And of course, in most instances, women do not own property. Of course, these sort of hamper them for them to have access to financial capacity. So those are the lived realities. Number one, there's number two, sorry. There is an inequality when it comes to opportunities when you have to look at women and men. I think there's a notion that says that women get the most opportunities, but if we still have to look at it, I think the only sector that we have done quite well in empowering women is within the political sector. And of course, Namibia, if you look countrywide, worldwide, we have sort of achieved gender parity. When it comes to that, we are number one in the world. But when you look at other sectors, such as the private sectors, women are still lagging behind. We do not have a lot of women CEOs. We do not have a lot of women that are occupying positions such as executive directors or just directors in general. So I think there is still much more work to be done in order for us to really push women and also to capacitate them so that they just occupy space as they should.
So this exclusion of women from those positions that you mentioned, what do you think? Do you think people sit in boardrooms and say, no, if it's a woman, let's not accept? Where do you think that comes from?
Well, I think there are a lot of sectors, factors involved. Number one, of course, you would see that a lot of women might not be qualified to perhaps occupy those positions, one. Two, it has to do with that we live in such a patriarchal society. When we engage private sectors, they would tell you that they would prefer hiring a male because they do not go on maternity leave, as opposed to a woman that one time in her life would have to go to maternity leave, and it means there will be a slowdown in her work. And of course, it takes quite a while to train somebody to occupy her space. So I think it has to do with it. And also three, people just believe that a lot of women are not capable and that our position should be in the kitchen, which is not the case. And this is why perhaps you don't see a lot of women occupying those spaces. And then, of course, lastly, this is a man's world. So we always need to penetrate through those barriers, cultural barriers, social barriers, and so forth. So I think this is why really women are lagging behind in that instances. And then I think lastly, there is no deliberate policies, especially in the private sectors, to empower women. I think the political spectrum has done so much with the zebra style, 50-50 zebra style. There is a lot of policies that speaks to the empowerment of women. But within the private sector, we are lagging behind. I think we need to have deliberate sectors that speaks to the empowerment of women.
Well, when you speak about being deliberate, what would it entail? I would imagine you've seen the advert at CRAN, was it late last year or early this year, where they said the applicants must be female.
Yes.
That was scandalous because I'm just a boy child. I'm coming from university. I have what it takes. And there's a vacancy in my country at a public institution. And I'm told I'm not qualified to apply. Is that the kind of deliberate?
No, I think that's not what we're asking for. Of course, there need to be a balance with how you go about these policies. But I think let's give an example. If, for instance, a board requires 7 members, at least if we say 3 of those should be women, I think that's fair enough. That's an adequate number, 1, 2, and it's deliberate to say that 3 positions will be occupied by women, of whether you are pink, blue, or whatever, regardless of whatever background you come from. At least those positions will be occupied by women. But to exclusively just say that this job opportunity is just for women, it really becomes scandalous and it becomes discriminative to the agenda, which is not what our constitution in Article 10 speaks about. It speaks that no person should be discriminated based on their gender, creed, and so forth. So I think they should be. We should strike a balance, and the policies should also speak to the statistics of women. Let's say if an area has a lot of women, let's look at looking for qualified women, and then they should occupy those spaces and not just look at them or overlook them because they are women there and that they are not capable. That should not be the way forward.
Yeah. In the political space, Duminga, I have my misgivings because I actually don't support personally these zebra style things. I understand the principle behind it, but I think of all spaces, the political space is one where it ought to be left to democracy to decide. Because what you have now with this zebra thing is that I elect my preferred councillor, men or women. And then because of these things of now hovering in others, my candidate that I voted for, that was voted by a group of people to be here, is pushed out because you have now to put in others to accommodate the gender parity thing. That's not very democratic.
Well, I agree with you. And this is why I say that we need to be careful when we advance issues of gender parity, when we advance issues of women empowerment. Of course, it becomes very unfair for your candidate to fall apart. I think we have all been victim of that. Being on a party list, of course, because you need to accommodate the zebra style system, you end up falling very low on the list. But I think the principle behind that is to really give an opportunity for women to sort of rise up within this political space. You would see that post even independence, a lot of women were not represented within parliament. And that's because the process was very open-ended, very democratic, as you said. And of course, men tend to vote for other men. Women also tend to vote for men. Unfortunately, that's the society we find ourselves in. So with this policy, really, it enabled women to rise up within the political space and also to occupy space. But I think what we need to guard against is just to place women in those positions because mainly they are women. But we need to look at substantive representation as opposed to descriptive representation. Substantive meaning these women are capable, they are qualified, and they are able to advance issues that speaks to the challenges of women, and not just descriptive representation because you are a woman and you're supposed to occupy those spaces. So that is the balance that we need to strike, and also to look. Those are the misgivings that we need to look at.
Absolutely. We go for a very short break and return with Duminga Ndala. We are continuing the conversation with Duminga Ndala here on the evening review. She is chairperson of the Young Women of Africa, the Namibian chapter of that organization. So let's still talk about women empowerment. Because do women want to be elevated into those spaces organically? Because the argument among you women is always that we are capable. And I have no iota of doubt about women's capabilities. We are more than capable. We are capable in equal terms as men. So why do you need a little push on the backside? Because you want to really rise organically on your own and say, I got here by my own virtues, not because someone was doing me a favor or there was a path cleared for me.
Look, I think your question is also very problematic. Of course, anyone would want to rise in whatever space they find themselves organically. But what we as women are asking is for you guys to open up that space. Sometimes, even if you work so hard, that door is always shut. And this is because we live in such a patriarchal society where women are not normally recognized for their hard work. They are not recognized for their effort, and that's the argument most men advance, that we want to be elevated, but we don't want to be wheelbarrowed. We want the same opportunity given to our male counterpart to be given to a woman counterpart. And
no, there's an application for board opportunities to become board members, and the application is open to everybody. Why must we reserve 3 positions for you?
Because if we have to leave it as open as it is, you would end up with a board of having 7 male. And why is that the case? Are the women that applied not disqualified as a male counterpart?
That is a question that we must answer, because how does it end up being just men? It means perhaps that they were best of the lot that applied.
Of all, this is, you see, this is why it's important.
Because I don't think, Duminga, I don't think anyone will say, look, you are scoring these people, a woman gets 85%, there's a guy who got 68, and on the basis of just being a man, you ignore the woman that has 87 and then you elevate them. I don't think that is how it is done.
Yes, of course. I think that will be very careless in that regard. But the issue is, why is it that women are not given the same access in terms of that compared to their male counterpart? Because you would go to a place where the board mainly consists of men, but they are equally qualified women. Is it because of the structural barriers that they are confronted with? Like I said, access to information is one. Because we have a tendency, especially within this country, where people hoard onto information. They would just give it to Toys because they know Tata Toys, and they wouldn't give it to Duminga because I am not acquainted to Duminga, and so forth. So perhaps we need to look at the barriers. Why is it that women are not given the same opportunity? Is it access to information? 1. 2, is it because perhaps they are not qualified enough, which I doubt, because when you look at the graduation statistics, every graduation season, more women are graduating as opposed to men. So where do those women go to?
Women were beating us hands down at university.
Exactly.
The cum laude lady in my class of 2006 at UNAM was a woman.
Exactly. So what happens to those women? Do we lose them within the system, or do they do not have access to the system? Of course, we can say that most of them, they tend to start building their families because that's what it's requested from society. Just today when I entered in this interview, your colleague asked when I was going to get married. Of course, perhaps he said it in good faith, but those are some of perhaps the barriers that women are confronted with, that when you reach at a certain age, you need to slow down on your ambitions, and you need to start building your family to contribute to society and so forth. So that is what we need to look at. Why is it that we lose this woman in the system, despite us really being deliberate with educating the girl child or woman in particular, and having policies that speaks to the empowerment of women?
Yeah. In fairness, the question about marriage, we were also asked a lot of that by people, because they felt that we've reached the age to get married, and marriage is just as much a burden to me as it is to you.
It's not as intense compared to your female counterpart.
Okay, fair point. No, I agree. There are biological obligations that weigh more heavily on the wife than the husband.
Of course.
I do accept that. But tell me about this these organizations like yours, where we say where we say it's young women of Africa. It's important. In Namibia, we have organizations like, I've seen things like Women in Oil, Women in this, Women in that. And I saw Dr. Job Ampanda asking in Parliament the other time, and he even used the term perfumed women.
Woman.
Which angered the speaker a little
Yes.
bit. And the point I think that he was driving home, especially in that sense, is that is the lack of representation of the common woman.
Correct.
It's people with MBAs, people with executive positions who are teaming up, and there's really, because if you are saying that men have sort of built a firewall around positions and stuff like that, the same could be said about those women also having really occupied that space. They appropriate the term women by not including a woman from Havana.
Correct.
How do we make sure that organizations like yours are not really just for you graduates and you professionals, and that a meme who sells kapana as a vendor in Okurangaba can also be part of the system?
Yeah, I think that's a very important question. And mostly, if you really see a lot of women organizations, they mostly include women that are learned, educated women, or women that find themselves within that sector. I think an organization like Young Women of Africa really gives an opportunity for us to engage rural women. I think most of our programs are very rural centered. They are people centered, and we believe that for you to build an organization, it should be from bottom up and not up to bottom. So our programs are structured, are women-centered or people-centered, because we would also like to uplift the material conditions of rural women.
Yeah.
And mostly rural women are excluded, and the policies that are always advanced at national level do not speak to the lived realities of rural women. This is why during our continental convention each year, we always go down to the grassroots level and invite those rural women, and we pay for their flight tickets so that they get an opportunity to get onto the flight, they get an opportunity to attend these conventions and also deliberate towards the discussions and contribute. So this is really what we are trying to do, to strike a balance. Even when you look at the delegates that are invited, mostly rural women as well, activists, those people that are at grassroots level, because we just do not want to have an elitist movement that is occupied by educated women, and we have left out our counterparts that are found in the rural or peri-urban areas. So I think going forth, and I speak to all women organizations, we need to strike a balance, and we really need to go to grassroots level to ensure that there is adequate exclusion of all women, whether you are in rural areas or urban areas.
Yeah. How do we make sure that in the advancement, the very relevant and justified advancement of women in society, that the boy child doesn't get left out? Because when I saw what Kren did, that was a case a case of the boy child being left out completely. If I'm just a young person, 23 years of age, I just graduated, I'm not responsible for all the problems in this country as far as men and women issues are concerned. And then I am made to pay a heavy price of not being allowed to apply for that. How do we make sure that in advancing women, we also do not leave the boy child behind?
Yeah, I think firstly what we need to note is that this is not competition between the genders. And I think mostly a lot of people look at it from that perspective, that we need to have a lot of programs that just speaks to empowering the girl child, and of course leaving behind the boy child. But of course we need to strike a balance, and this responsibility should especially be left to the Ministry of Gender and Equality, of course, that as much as we advocate for programs and policies that speaks to the advancement of the girl child, in the same vein, we should also do it to the boy child, so that this boy child is not left behind, so that this boy child is not excluded from decision making and policy implementation. There is one. Two, within the Young Women of Africa, when we have our outreach programs, we ensure that we have tailor-made programs that both speaks to the girl child and the boy child, so that no gender is left behind. As much as we distribute sanitary pads to the girl child, we also have hygienic kits that we give out to the boy child. So both genders win in that instances. And then of course, three, in terms of our legislation, they should speak to the advancement of both the gender. It should just not be the girl child and exclusively leave the boy child. It should also speak to the boy child. And I liked what Honorable Amutenya did on Friday in Parliament. He read a letter to the Minister of Gender from the boy child, speaking about how the boy child has been excluded from everything. And it's really a good thing that we need to have a lot of members of parliament equally advocating for the boy child. So I think that was very brilliant from his side. So I think our legislation should speak to both genders. Programs should be tailor-made for both genders so that nobody excluded.
Absolutely. Duminga, thank you very much for talking to us. We always appreciate your presence here.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure being here.
Yeah, wonderful. That is Duminga Ndala speaking to us, of course, in her capacity as chairperson of Young Women of Africa, the Namibian chapter, speaking about the Africa Young Women Knowledge Festival that is coming up, I think, next week, the 24th and 25th of April at the Hilton Hotel in Windhoek. More information will be shared through the media according to Ms. Ndala here. So thank you for watching.
Thank you.